Republic of Lakotah proposal. The Republic of Lakotah, or Lakota, is a proposed independent republic in North America for the Lakota people and other people. Proposed in 2007 by activist Russell Means, the suggested territory would be enclaved by the borders of the United States, covering thousands of square miles in North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Wyoming, and Montana. These proposed borders are those of the 1851 Treaty of Fort Laramie between the United States government and the Lakota. These lands are now occupied by Indian reservations and non-native settlements. None of the existing Lakota tribal governments support the proposed republic, and they were not consulted about the proposal. According to one scholar, the Declaration of Independence by the Republic of Lakotah in 2007 has been largely ignored by the U.S. as well as by the UN and its member states. Background: 4 activists, calling themselves the Lakota Freedom Delegation, traveled to Washington, D.C. on December 17, 2007, and delivered a statement declaring that they were withdrawing from the treaties their ancestors signed with the U.S. and setting up their own independent nation. Reasons cited included that the federal government has failed to abide by 33 treaties that promised land, health care, education, and other services. Their leader was Russell Means, one of the prominent members of the American Indian movement in the late 1960s and 1970s. The Lakota Freedom Delegation stated that they did not recognize tribal governments or presidents as recognized by the United States Bureau of Indian Affairs, sometimes referring to these groups as stay-by-the-fort Indians. Nor did any tribal governments, elected by the tribal people themselves, recognize the Republic of Lakotah. Territory, demographics, and economics. The proposed boundaries of Lakota would be the Yellowstone River to the north, the North Platte River to the south, the Missouri River to the east, and an irregular line marking the west. These borders coincide with those set by the 1851 Treaty of Fort Laramie. The territory of the Sioux or Dakota Nation, commencing the mouth of the White Earth River on the Missouri River, thence in a southwesterly direction to the forks of the Platte River, thence up the North Fork of the Platte River to a point known as the Red Buttes, or where the road leaves the river, thence along the range of mountains known as the Black Hills to the headwaters of Heart River. Activities. On January 1, 2008, the Republic announced that it would file liens on all U.S. government-held lands within their claimed borders. However, the first round of liens in an unnamed county in South Dakota were rejected. In July 2008, Means announced that the Republic of Lakotah would be founding an all-Lakota grand jury to investigate corruption by U.S. government officials on the 7 reservations in the Republic's claimed territory. Means unsuccessfully ran for the presidency of the Oglala Lakota. Politics and government. Citizenship in the proposed republic would be open to people of all races and to any resident of the land Lakota claims. The group said they plan to issue their own passports and driving licenses in the name of the proposed nation. The group proposed that the nation be organized as a confederation that would respect the libertarian principles of posse comitatus and caveat emptor, would offer individual liberty through community rule, and would collect no nationwide taxes. However, individual communities within the proposed nation would be allowed to levy taxes with the consent of the taxed. Russell Means suggested that the proposed nation should not use fiat currency, but instead adopt a gold standard. Means stated that this system of government is derived from the traditional Lakota government system, saying we are going to implement how we lived prior to the invasion. Each community will be a mini-state unto itself. They will form the federation known as Lakota. As of 2008, Russell Means identified himself as chief facilitator of a provisional government of the Republic. Means died in 2012. The 4 signatories of the Lakota Freedom Delegation's letter to the United States Department of State that announced withdrawal from the U.S. identified themselves by the title of Attack of Lakota in a press release. Leaders of communities would be informally chosen by elders of the community. Government. The following people identified themselves as members of the Provisional Government of Lakota. Russell Means, Chief Facilitator, died 2012. Tekai KT, also called Gary Rowland Fully. Clarence Gary Anthony Rowland Facilitator. Rowland Facilitator. Rowland Facilitator. Philly's young provisional government member. The capital of Lakota was not announced. The Republic of Lakota gave its provisional capital as Porcupine, South Dakota, with hopes in the long run to move administration to near Rapid City, South Dakota. Assertion of independence. The Lakota Freedom Delegation traveled to Washington, D.C. and contacted the State Department, announcing that the Lakota were unilaterally withdrawing from the several treaties with the United States government. The delegation presented a letter, dated December 17, 2007, and signed by longtime Indian activists Russell Means, Gary Rowland, Dwayne Kanukagluha, Manny Martin Sr., and Phillies Young, which declared the Lakota to be predecessor sovereign of Dakota Territory and cited gross violations of the treaties between the Lakota. The letter also invited the United States government to enter into negotiations with the newly declared entity, there identified only as Lakota. It threatened that if good faith negotiations were not begun, then Lakota will begin to administer liens against real estate transactions within the 5-state area of Lakota. The group also has pursued international recognition for Lakota at the embassies of Venezuela, Bolivia, Chile, and South Africa. Russell Means has made reference to Finland and Iceland as well. Legal basis for independence. Supporters of Lakota argue that their assertion of sovereignty is entirely legal under natural, international, and United States law. The group emphasizes that the Republic's establishment comes from a withdrawal from the United States, not a secession. The group claims the right to withdraw on behalf of the Lakota people from the treaties of Fort Laramie as a consequence of the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties and the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Members argue that the decision in the case of Lone Wolf v. Hitchcock, 187 U.S. 553, 1903, shows that the United States government does not adequately protect Indian rights. Means cites the Enabling Act of 1889, stating that clauses protecting Indian sovereignty on the lands comprising the states where the Lakota historically reside have been ignored. In a 15 January 2008 news release, the Republic of Lakota proposed that independence from the United States might follow a compact of free association and suggested that the independence process could resemble that of the Philippines, Palau, the Federated States of Micronesia, or the Marshall Islands. Russell Means stated that he intended to treat the result of the 2008 Pine Ridge Reservation presidential election, in which he was a candidate, as a plebiscite/referendum on Lakota independence. He lost that election 1918 to 2277. Motivations for independence. Reactions. None of the existing Lakota tribal governments supported the proposed republic, and they were not consulted about the proposal. Russell Means and Kanukagluha Manny have claimed that some 13,000 Lakota, including 77% of the population of Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, have shown support for the Republic of Lakota, and that the 8-member delegation which traveled to Washington, D.C., was only a portion of some 77 tribal elders and activists taking part in the movement. However, Rapid City Journal reporter Bill Harlan reported on his blog that most folks I talked to hadn't heard about the declaration. The ones who had heard the news, to a person, did not want to talk about it on the record. The Journal has also noted that there were no tribal presidents in the group which made the announcement, no one from the top ranks of any of the Lakota Sioux tribes. Nanwika Kasiji and Oglala Lakota, and first president of the Native American Journalists Association, has also discredited the December 2007 developments, arguing that the Lakota Freedom Delegation never considered that treaties are made between nations and not individuals. American responses. Recognized Native American governments. Rodney Bordeaux, chairman of the Rosebud Sioux, said that Rosebud Indian Reservation has no interest in joining the Republic of Lakotah, and said that the Lakota Freedom Delegation never presented their plan to the tribal council. Bordeaux stated that the group does not represent the Lakota people nor the support of the elected tribal governments. However, he did say that Russell Means made some good points. Joseph Brings Plenty, chairman of the Cheyenne River Lakota, agreed that the Lakota Freedom Delegation are not representative of the nation I represent, but would not say whether he agreed or disagreed with their goals and message, noting some value in the group's actions in raising awareness for the history of the Lakota people. Federal government. The United States Department of State referred queries on the subject of Lakota to the United States Department of the Interior, which oversees the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Gary Garrison of the BIA said that the group's withdrawal doesn't mean anything. These are not legitimate tribal governments elected by the people. When they begin the process of violating other people's rights, breaking the law, they are going to end up like all the other groups that have declared themselves independent, usually getting arrested and being put in jail. Regarding the government response, or lack thereof, Russell Means stated that, "I don't expect other American movements." The Alaskan Independence Party, in an announcement dated December 21, 2007, applauded the independent Lakota Nation and granted it full recognition. The secessionist movement Second Vermont Republic has also announced its support and encouraged other American Indian groups to similarly declare independence from the United States. International responses. Internationally, according to Russell Means, Venezuela's ambassador to the United States has stated to the group that his country cannot recognize Lakota's independence based on Venezuela's interpretation of what the Lakota Freedom Delegation is doing. In February 2008, the Lakota Freedom Delegation, including Means, handed over a formal petition asking for recognition of the Republic of Lakotah to the embassies of Russia, Serbia, Bolivia, Venezuela, the Republic of South Africa, Ireland, France, Nicaragua, East Timor, Chile, Turkey, India. The text of the petition is available online.